Well, good morning, good people. Happy Friday morning, in fact, people. Mark Holmes here, of course, with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo. And as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. Hope everybody's having a great day. Don't forget, tonight, 9 o'clock Eastern, we'll be doing our live stream. We are working on giving away Drew Pearson autographed print tonight at our live stream. Anybody who becomes a channel member, any of the super chats that we have had, we've got them all in a bucket and stuff, will be eligible for the drawing. So right now it's silly season, and it was great last night because my brothers in arms, Jay Tuck, CFO Sports, had me on his channel last night. Go watch that. We were discussing all of the ins and outs of the Cowboys and why we think that we are where we are. The crazy thing about the Dallas Cowboys is it's always about drama. It doesn't matter how they play, their losing record, winning record, they're always talked about, which is part of the problem here, that sometimes you believe your own hype. And we also end up on the reverse of this. We look at things differently and say, things that happen with the Cowboys, don't happen with other teams. Because we are so visible, we microanalyze every pass play, every interception, every tackle to the nth degree. And typically, other players aren't scrutinized like this. And so I ask you, as we sit here with Dak Prescott's contract situation, if we look at this and say he doesn't deserve $60 million, that he gets scrutinized. And that's a fair thing to say. Do you want to pay and lock up a quarterback for that kind of money for those amount of years? And it doesn't matter who you're talking about. All these things come with risk. You could look at Kansas City, who did a 10-year deal with Pat Mahomes early on, and it looks like that deal paid off. You could look at the Eagles, who paid Carson Wentz early. That one doesn't look real good. You could look at the Cardinals paying Kyler Murray or Deshaun Watson, paying him. That none of those deals have actually paid dividends. But we have this mindset that Dak Prescott, well, he's a failure in things. And we're still sitting here on the precipice of others having to make the same decision. Trevor Lawrence just got, now tied as the highest paid player in the NFL. And some people will say, oh, yeah, well, you're paying because he's got, a high ceiling and this, that, and the other. But if you look at the body of work for the first 3 years, you might wonder, was that a good investment? And so I ask you, do you think that Jordan Love, they're talking about possibly $60 million for Jordan Love. Do you have a problem with Jordan Love making $60 million? And then you look and say, Jordan Love is worth it, but Dak Prescott isn't. Because here's where it gets to be interesting. Actually, I tell you what. Let's let Pat McAfee in their show talk about it first, and I'll come back with my thoughts on it.
And you talk about, do you want to guarantee your average per year? And there's one particular agent that said, you got it. And there's one rookie contract quarterback that is coming up with said agent. Green Bay Packers, let's go to boots on the ground, Ty Schmidt.
Yeah, Lombo. So what will the situation with Jordan Love be? Because obviously you're kind of only dealing with the second half of last year where he played so well because the first half wasn't great. But going into those negotiations, will Brian Gutekunst just kind of understand, hey, I'm going to have to fight tooth and nail here because David Mulugeta is representing Jordan Love. And even though it's only a half season worth of tape and what he did, but where is he going to fall in? Because I just assume with Mulugeta being his agent that he's going to get the top, he's going to set the bar, and then, whether Tua goes next or Dak or whoever is going to kind of fall in after that.
Well, I think that's the real issue, right? And so this is the hardest contract to do because this is a little bit like buying on spec, right? It's almost like you're going to build a spec house and you got to sell it. David's going to argue that his players should be paid like the guys that have the money. Whereas the Packers, Russ Ball, who will do the contract, not Good, Russ Ball's going to argue that we'll pay on the come. We'll certainly pay a base level, but we want to see more of this player playing at the level. And they're going to have to find a way to meet in the middle, whether it's through incentives, whether it's through yearly buildup in terms of increasing the salary per year. But to turn around and just say after 8 games, I'm going to give you $55 million a year with 80% of it guaranteed, that's something that I'm sure the Packers don't want to enter into, because you've got to look at this. What happens if the 8 games were wrong? What happens if the fourth quarter of the 49er game ends up being the way he played? Look, I think he's played great. But you look at the first half of the season, they were protecting the team from him. In the second half of the season, he was winning games with them. So it's 2 different things. Remember, they went into New York and lost to Tommy DeVito and turned the ball over. Well, so it hasn't been just a rise. There hasn't been just a rise. So there's an argument on both sides. These are the hard contracts to do. The contracts that are easy to do is when there's no argument on one side. Like, there's an argument to be made here, and you've got to find a middle ground. And I think they have to. And this is why I think this one will be hard for them to do before the season kicks off. Maybe they can, but that's the one. Whereas the other ones, I mean, I think to me it's going to come down to the Rams saying, yeah, we want to do something with you, Matthew. We definitely want to handle it. Look, Love's going to get paid. It's just how are they going to structure the contract? That's the issue.
What if it came down to just like a 2-year deal? You know, and obviously 4 or 5-year deals are what everybody does, but he's in an interesting situation. Not because of his own doing. Obviously, he was drafted in, not because, I mean, the package $10 million each year in incentives that you can get up to 100, and then he's a free agent in 2 years from now with no franchise tag, or they can renegotiate that second year and get the long-term deal so they can get better eyes. Would that be a thought, or there's no way Mulugeta lets that happen?
Well, to me, it's when you're guaranteeing money, you want years. So time equals money in all negotiations. So the more guarantee I give you, the more years I want back. And so if you're asking me to guarantee 80% of the deal and I'm only getting 2 years, why am I doing that? I mean, if I do a 2-year contract, I really don't, and I'm Jordan Love, you don't need to guarantee anything in writing because I'm going to earn it all. So that's what David's going to argue. You're not going to cut him after a year. He's too good of a player. So why won't you just guarantee everything? Okay, that makes sense. But now I've guaranteed. I only got 2 years on these guarantees. Let me have more years. And then you're talking about high cap numbers. Now we're talking about percentage of the cap going way up because we're only doing a 2-year contract. So
and it's fully guaranteed.
It's a challenge. And I think Green Bay's smart enough to figure it out. Russ Ball's done a lot of contracts in his career. They've got the cap room. They certainly have the cash to pay this thing out. You know, and I think that ultimately they'll do that.
Hey,
but
Lombo,
they got to figure out what the right number is.
Lombo,
Okay, so here's the thing. We saw Jimmy G get paid, became the highest paid player in the NFL after basically about 6 games or so with New England. We saw Carson Wentz get paid basically off of 13 games. We've seen Deshaun Watson, basically he had an incredible season there. Be it in a 4-12 campaign that got him a fully guaranteed contract with the Cleveland Browns that are been desperate for a quarterback. Now, if you're saying that it's okay, well, we've seen enough. We've seen enough leaves fall off the tree here, and for a season. Now, here's what the numbers are for the season: 4,159 yards, 64.2 passer rating, 7.2 yards per pass. 32 TDs, 11 interceptions, and that sounds really good, But on the flip side of this, when they say that the Cowboys had, a cake schedule, well, when you start looking and saying they had the Bears twice, when you start looking and saying that they had Atlanta Falcons, New Orleans Saints, the Raiders, Denver, Minnesota twice without Kirk Cousins, they had the Chargers, they had Pittsburgh. They had the Giants. They had Tampa Bay before they and lost. They had Carolina. Do you look at this and say that these were all great teams? Because the way I look at this, now they did beat Kansas City. I'll give you credit for that. When you beat Kansas City, you beat the Lions once, you lost to the Lions once, and you beat the Chargers 23-20. I believe the Chargers had a winning record last year, and you beat the Rams. But those are the only teams that had winning records. That's it. when you start looking at this, and then you start looking and saying some of those games early on, you 3 TDs, 1 interception against the Bears, 3 TDs, no interceptions against the Falcons. The lion's share of the touchdowns, like you could say with Dak Prescott, they're feasting on the bad teams. And let's do this one as well, because, and I'm not arguing, understand this, I'm not arguing that Jordan Love shouldn't get paid. I'm not. I'm just pointing out people seem to think that no quarterback other than Dak Prescott ever has a bad game or anything like that. But if we go through the numbers, granted, they beat us flat out. I can't say anything about that. I still believe that the Cowboys were looking past them. They weren't taking this seriously. They were falling back on, we haven't lost at home and we're great at home. And they didn't come in there like they were prepared. And having the issues of stopping the run and not having linebackers reared their ugly head, along with not being able to run the football. But you look at this, 69.5 for Dak completion percentage, 5% more, over 5. More passing yards. You look at the yards per pass play. You look at yards passing per game. You look at the TDs. You look at the interceptions. Dak Prescott, it's not even close on the numbers. And I'm not saying, but trust me, I'm not saying Jordan Love didn't play well the second half of the season. But are you going to pay a guy $55 to $60 million off of basically half a season? But we look at a quarterback who is MVP candidate 2 of the last 3 years. No, we need to see more. I'm sorry, that just does not make sense. One thing I am actually happy about seeing on ESPN is, and we have a perception and then there's reality. I talked to him about this last night with Jay Tuck. I said, when you think about, let's say Joe Burrow, okay? Right now we have Joe Burrow is, he's the second best quarterback in football, or they'll say Josh Allen. But what if that year they went to the Super Bowl was the pinnacle and he never gets back to that level? People will say, yeah, but he was injured. He was injured last year. You can't really count that. But here's the problem. As we found out as Cowboy fans, injuries are part of the game. If you can't stay healthy and stay on the field, then it doesn't matter how good you are. And so you sit here and say, he had his rookie year, the complete knee rebuild. He's had the calf issues and things like that. Is he a player that's going to end up breaking down? And so you wonder, is there pressure on him? Then you have Josh Allen, who really took his big leap when they got Stephon Diggs, who has been a phenomenal quarterback, but has been a guy that turns over the ball quite a bit. He has been to an AFC championship game, but if he never gets back, and let's say Joe Burrow never gets back to a Super Bowl, or if Josh Allen never gets back to an AFC championship game, do you still look at them and say that they're great quarterbacks? What if their careers from here on out are just mediocre? Nobody knows, because football, from one year to the next, you can have a major drop-off. And I'll even throw in, could that be Jalen Hurts? That Jalen Hurts just had a really good team that stayed healthy and had one good year, but he's never really the same. So I'm going to end this morning listening to this, because at least somebody else is finally putting it on the table.
The Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, on the chase to a three-peat, can they weather their greatest challenge so far? We've seen this team and organization go through like roster overhaul and changes and maybe question marks when it comes to on-the-field play. But the noise and the loud element that has been a part of this team and organization this offseason is something different for them. Can they weather that, which is very unusual territory for them?
Yeah, this is a situation also, too, when we talk about the problems that they're facing. It's not just about what's happening off the field. Rashee Rice now facing legal issues stemming from a very serious crash in Dallas, but also will he even be available for the season? Will he be on the field at the start of the year? Will he be able to contribute to a team that very dearly needed him for their Super Bowl run last year? We will continue to keep an eye on it as it pertains to Rice's legal issues, and then, of course, following up on how it pertains to the on-field situation.
Dan, you have some questions about Buffalo?
Yeah, a team that's been a lead dog in the AFC. Who was the lead dog? Was it Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs? Everyone knows my thoughts on Josh Allen and the type of player he is, and also my immense respect and appreciation for the dominant wide receiver Steph has been. But Steph's not there anymore. And this is still expected to be a lead dog in the AFC. And we've watched Patrick Mahomes go win the Super Bowl without his guy, Tyreek Hill. Is Josh truly in that conversation? I believe he is. But it's time for him to prove to himself, his organization, in the NFL that, hey, as good as that guy 15 is in Kansas City, and although I don't have my lead dog at wide receiver right now, the success falls on my shoulders and ride my back when it comes to being able to carry this team into the playoffs and Super Bowl contention.
You know, Jeff, I look at this situation and I start to think to myself, how can we continue comparing Josh Allen to Patrick Mahomes? We can't say Josh Allen is saying he's Patrick Mahomes or he's in the same tier as Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes lost his league dog and still won a championship, because before Patrick Mahomes lost his league dog, he already had a championship. And then he came back and showed you that he can win another championship. And I know a lot of times we try to give all of this credit to the quarterback, but sometimes it's the surrounding cast, right? The people that are around him that helped him elevate to where he is or to where he got to. And it looked the same way in Buffalo to me. When you look at this situation with Stephon Diggs leaving, Jeff, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think this is wildly complicated for multiple reasons. I don't think that you can diminish or take away from what Stephon Diggs meant to this team in terms of production specifically over the last several years. But very clearly the Bills made a conscious decision that they feel like they're better off without Stephon Diggs on the field. Now, that comes with a lot of things to talk about, like money and all those things. But we know that there were certainly there was some tension in the building the last 2 seasons when it came to Diggs and whether he could coexist in that locker room. And we're going to find out now the on-field production, the impact of that, and the chemistry that existed. Because the problem here is that they didn't replace Stephon Diggs. They still feel a little bit bare in that cupboard. Maybe Josh Allen elevates guys the way that Patrick Mahomes did in Kansas City, but there is no doubt that this is looming large over the Buffalo Bills. You can't escape that.
Yeah, they got to go be explosive on offense. That's really the difference. They were the previous 3 seasons. They weren't last year. Okay, I'm not comparing anybody to Patrick Mahomes anymore. He is in a class by himself.
You never should have.
But Josh Allen, who has been one of the 3 best quarterbacks in football for what feels like 3 or 4 years now, has the opportunity this year to firmly take stake at the number 2 spot because of no longer having Steph. I don't think that we are going. Steph's production was unbelievable. But I do think that there's the opportunity for Josh this year to go and even to a different conversation. A guy that has been, again, top 3, been in that MVP conversation. He can even elevate it greater with a repeat performance season that we've seen him have over the past couple seasons without a bona fide number 1 wideout.
Dan, you also have questions if Cincinnati is running into deja vu with their new number 1 overall pick.
No one hates saying this more, but can Joe Burrow avoid becoming Carson Wentz?
There you go.
Carson Wentz, for a couple seasons, was awesome. And he was this MVP type of candidate, and oh my gosh, he's great. And then that injury happened because of some of the style of play and the hits that built up. And we've seen Joe Burrow 2 times in the last 4 years have season-ending injuries. RC, since he's become a pro, 148 sacks. That is not sustainable in the NFL. I love Joe Burrow. I think he's as good as anybody that's not 15. But can he avoid becoming one of those guys that, oh my gosh, unbelievable talent, but never became and won that Super Bowl championship because of some of the injuries early in his career?
Jeff, are we skipping some of the other things that were part of Carson Wentz no longer being a Cincy?
Yeah, to repeat Dan Orlovsky, I love Dan Orlovsky, But I think he's one of the best analysts on television. But
no doubt.
The idea that he's making a comparison between Joe Burrow and Carson Wentz is preposterous and
preposterous and crazy. All right, good people. I hope you all have a wonderful day. We got, of course, all kinds of stuff that we're going to be talking about throughout the day, because I don't think people realize the ramifications of the NFL lawsuit. Now, right now, nothing's going to happen immediately, but down the road, if it ends up being that the NFL loses the appeal, $4.7 billion is going to have to come from someplace, and you'll never guess where it's going to come from. We'll be talking about that. Jerry Jones, is he really the real problem for the Dallas Cowboys? As well as much, much more. I'll be seeing you guys soon. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
I don't know what to say, really. 3 minutes to the biggest battle of our professional lives. All comes down to today. Either we heal as a team, or we're going to crumble.